on Friday.
Mr. Ali, or Ally, was in the witness box.
Is he here?
He's on his way around.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Ally, I want to deal first with the Judicial Committee and how the Judicial Committee dealt with the allegations that had been raised by BCG. Now, firstly, as I understand it, you and Mr. Bowditch and Mr. DeRoy had already formed a Judicial Committee to deal with unrelated allegations. Is that right?
Yes.
And they were allegations briefly put to do with BCG's father's relationship or possible relationship with another woman, not his wife. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then when these allegations of BCG were brought to the elders, you then dealt with them in the same Judicial Committee. Is that right?
The same members of the Judicial Committee, yes.
Yes. So you didn't have an independent investigation first and then decide to form a Judicial Committee. You just subsumed them into the discussions and investigation you were already doing. Is that right?
I know it followed fairly closely, but I'm not sure of the time element there, no, but it was tied in pretty much together.
Well, that's right, isn't it? That in the meetings that you had with various people who were involved or had an interest or were witnesses, you discussed these matters together. In other words, the question of BCG's father's relationship with another woman as well as BCG's allegations.
That, I believe, came at the end, later, after we had dealt with the father.
Well, I'm going to show you your notes in a minute. We'll come to that, but let's just get it clear what you mean. Do you mean to say you dealt with the other allegations and made a finding on them, and then only thereafter you dealt with BCG's allegations?
Yes, followed through, yeah.
Now, I think your memory may be failing you on that, Mr. Ally. And in that regard, I'll refer you to tab 3 of the tender bundle. You see, this is the report of your Judicial Committee. We can scroll down and see the names at the bottom. This is the report, and where your finding was on the last line there, loose conduct and lying, and the brother was disfellowshipped. Do you see that?
Yes.
Right. Now, at the time that BCG raised her allegations and you dealt with them, her father was not disfellowshipped.
Not on those allegations, but on what we dealt with him of an immoral course that he had taken with his wife. That's the founding or the findings that we had that we referred to on that loose conduct line.
Yes, I see that. But the at the time you dealt with BCG's allegations, you had not yet disfellowshipped the father. Is that right?
We had taken the steps of announcing that disfellowshipping.
Well,
we had completed that sitting with him and decided that he needs to be disfellowshipped for what he did.
Well, if he'd already been disfellowshipped, why were you investigating further allegations against him?
What came through after that, they have the person who has this loose conduct in line and was referred to disfellowshipping had 7 days to appeal if he wanted others to hear his case against what we decided. Then a further committee could be made available to follow through. So there was at least 7 days before we could announce that he was disfellowshipped, that he acted in that way of saying, I would like another committee to sit in and hear my situation.
Right, well, let's just straighten out the chronology. If you take a look at tab 4. You see, this is a memo addressed to Ron DeRoy, Kevin Bowditch, and Dino Ally. Do you see that at the top left?
I do.
And it's headed Appeal on basis of repentance. And it says, Dear brothers, I wish to appeal. And then it goes on and it's difficult to read. But at the end, you'll see that it's signed by BCH, that's BCG's father. Let's go to the foot of the page. And you'll see it's dated 19 July 1989. Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you accept he appealed on that date?
That's what the appeal was, that's what he appealed, yes, on that basis.
So your decision to disfellowship him obviously preceded that?
Yes.
It was on that day or it was before that day?
Yes.
Yes. All right, now if we go back to tab 3. And go to the top of the page, it's actually undated except for a date stamp that says SD 7 August 1989. Do you know how that stamp came to be applied there?
No, I'm not sure.
They would suggest it's the service desk received that on the 7th of August 1989.
Okay.
And if we go to tab 5, you'll see this is the decision of the appeal. Do you recognize the names of the appeal committee there, Messrs. Bennett, Wilson, and Maraziz?
I do.
And that's dated 23 July 1989. You see that?
Yes, yes.
And there's a stamp SD 7 August 1989 at the top of that page as well.
Yes.
I take it, again, you don't know how that came there, but it looks like it may have been service desk.
I assume so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to show you some handwritten notes. I must just caution you and unredacted. You give him an unredacted. Okay, I understand you've been given a copy of some handwritten notes that's been redacted, but with pseudonyms inserted where the redactions are. Is that right?
Okay, yep.
Is that what you have?
I have, yes.
We have copies on the page. Right, so what I've handed up, and have also been given to my learned friends, as I understand, is some handwritten or manuscript notes, as well as a best effort to transcribe those notes and to type them out. Now, firstly, Mr. Ally, are these notes yours? In other words, they're in your handwriting, are they?
They appear to be so, yes.
Yes. And in fact, you gave evidence about these notes in one or other of the criminal trials, is that right?
I can't remember, but I was there, and I think that was the case.
Yes. Now, you'll see that these, this appears to be, or these notes appear to be torn from a notebook with a spiral binder. Do you see that?
Yes.
And at the top of the pages, they numbered in manuscript. You'll see 1, 2, 3, and so on. Do you see that?
I do.
That numbering, is that also your manuscript?
It appears to be so, yes.
Yes. And you'll see the notes start. It says Notes of Investigating Committee, and it's got 1 June 1989. Do you see that?
Is that on the first page?
On page 1, on the first and second lines. Notes of Investigating Committee 1-6-89.
It could be a fifth or a sixth. Like what's shown to me here.
Okay, well, either way, that's fine. And if you look at the page which has page 14, it's Ringtail 1494. Right, do you see that? Now the next page is actually unnumbered. It's at 1495, and at the foot of that page it says 19-7-89 BCH appeals fax to Kevin. Do you see that?
Is that on after page 14? And there's another page without that 15.
Yes.
At the bottom of that?
It's an unnumbered page between
Yes.
14 and 15.
Yes, I see that.
And then equally after, at the back of page 15, there's an unnumbered page. At the back of page 16, there's an unnumbered page, and so on. So, and we take it, Mr. Ally, that the pages that precede that unnumbered page on the screen now, which is the back of 14, deal with matters that you dealt with prior to the appeal.
It's very difficult to read. It's okay to take a little bit of time to look at that.
Yes.
I'm not sure, but it possibly could be.
Well, I'll show you, Mr. Ally, how it stands to reason. The pages are numbered in order, and they're numbered in order by you. That's right?
Generally, the first pages are seemingly in order. I'm not sure where. I'd probably need a bit more time to sort of peruse through that to make a judgment on that.
We'll have a look from page 11. ringtail 1488.
Yes.
And you'll see that that page, as it's reflected there, has the torn off part of it at the top of the page.
Yes.
And then the next page, which is unnumbered, has the torn off part at the foot of the page.
At the bottom?
Yes.
Yes.
And you'll see what's more, that those torn off tabs actually match. Do you see that?
So that what's on the screen is reflecting what's on the page?
Well, you just look at the page if you like, it's easier.
Yeah.
Mr. Ally, if you look at page 11, and then you look at the next page, it's actually the reverse of page 11, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
You can see how the tabs match up. You see what I mean?
I see it. Yes, at the bottom, the tear.
Yes.
Yes.
And the tear. And page 12, the reverse of page 12 is actually numbered 13A for some reason. But you see that it's the reverse of the same page.
Yep. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And 13 then has the page following 13 is the reverse of page 13. Do you see that?
Yes.
Right. Now, if we go back to earlier in the piece, and in particular, if you take a look at page 4, so it's ringtail 1481. In the middle of the page, there are two names that are written there. It's BCG and BCI. That's BCG's mother. And those are underlined twice, those names. And then it's got a dash, and it says molesting, exclamation mark, 4 or 5 times. Now, what this suggests is that your committee met with BCG and her mother. Is that right? And below that are the notes, your notes, of what they told you.
It appears to be so, yes.
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 And then you'll see towards the foot of that page, in the left-hand margin, it has BCG's mother's name written there, BCI, colon, dash, and it says that BCH has gone to something, and it carries on. Do you see that?
Yes.
Right. Now, what you've recorded there next to those dashes is what BCG's mother told you. Not so. Your note of what she told you.
I can't remember that.
Well, that's how the note is structured, isn't it? You've got her name, colon, and then you've got a number of points noted down, suggesting that that's what she told you. Seem to be struggling with that.
No, that's true. But I'm not. I'm trying to ascertain whether the mother was there or whether this was a flow on from something that came up from. If it was BCG,
Well,
that's the only thing I'm not very sure.
go back to the beginning of the notes. You'll see the way in which you've structured them which stands to reason and is the way anyone else would structure their notes, is you write the name of a person, you underline it, you put a colon, and then you make notes of what that person's told you. And it starts on page 1 with the name, which it's redacted, but I can tell you, I have it in front of me, it's one of the people involved in...
Well, do we have the original document?
We don't have the original, we only have photocopies which we got from the police, but we can show the witness an unredacted
I think you
copy.
should do that. Mm. And are there lines on the page above BCI in the top third? Is that the photocopy that I've got rather suggests that someone's been drawing lines between people who speak.
There are indeed lines on it. That's on the page, manuscript page 4.
4, and it seems to be the same on 5. There seems to be a pattern of ruling a line across when you get, and the same is true on 6, I think, when you get to a different person and notes being taken, and it goes on through the document as I see this copy. Anyway.
Do you see that?
I see what Your Honour has been saying, yes.
So now, of course, this happened a long time ago. You may not have a clear recollection of the actual events, and you can tell us that in a moment. But the important point here is we're asking you to interpret your own notes. Now, the way in which it's structured makes it very clear, I suggest to you, is that it's recording that you, as you met with different people and they told you things, you've written their name and you've recorded what they've told you. Do you accept that?
Based on what's been written here, yes, I would accept that, yes.
And there's no reason to suggest the contrary, is there?
On the face of that, I wouldn't object to that, no.
We are getting you an unredacted copy, but we can deal with what's on page 4 in the meanwhile. Do you have page 4 in front of you?
Yes, yes.
It's the one on the screen. And you'll see the last line says, BCH, that's GCB's father, has abused 2 younger children, possibly, and then it says BCK, that's the oldest daughter, 2, at age 2. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, that's what the mother told you, didn't she?
Again, I'm not sure that that was the mother. It may have been. It may have been. Yes.
And certainly you were told it, if not by the mother, then by BCG herself.
That I can't recall, but if it's in the notes that BCG did that...
Well, the note suggests very clearly that it was the mother who told you that, because you got the mother's name, colon, and then you jot down a few points that she made, apparently, and then it says, dash, being a new one, says BCH has abused 2 younger children, possibly BCK2 at age 2.
That's on the basis. It's very difficult to do that. One can assume that wherever I put a dash in the notes against the name, that one can assume that that person said that.
Yes. And then if we look at page 5, you'll see it has BCK. That's the eldest daughter. And it's underlined twice, and it has a colon, and then in brackets it says by herself. Do you see that?
Sorry, I'm just still looking. BCK.
There's an unredacted copy you've been given now. Obviously, you appreciate, Mr. Ally, that we're doing our very best not to mention the names of these people involved.
Certainly. Yes.
So do you see page 5?
Yes, I've got that now.
And you see it has the name of the oldest daughter,
Correct.
who I think is your daughter-in-law,
Yes.
and it says in brackets by herself,
Yes.
and then there are various things jotted down there, and in the 9th line, it says on abuse to, and it mentions her name, question mark dash, and then there's an arrow, and it says yes, at age 3, remembers vividly. Do you see that?
Yes.
So she also told your committee about having been abused by her father,
Yes.
and this was your judicial committee prior to the appeal committee.
It appears that way, yes.
Yes. And then, if you look at page 8, you'll see this on the sixth line where it's indented. It says she does not like what Dad is doing with, and it has a redacted name, that's the other woman, and commendably when pulled up before the other woman by the father to deny charge of molestation to the eldest daughter, BCK, she insisted on the truth despite the father's efforts to the contrary. Do you see that?
I do.
And the she that's referred to, you will see, is the eldest daughter herself. If we go to the previous page, page 7, right at the foot of the page, well, you can see the page there. You'll see down the left-hand side there are a couple of bits that are underlined. Near the middle of the page it says next day, that day, no, next day. Then 3 lines below that it says that night. And then right at the foot of the page it says same night, we visit BCK, that's the eldest daughter, for some talk on Watchtower articles. And then it says over. And when one goes over the page, it carries on. And what it records here, does it not, again, the elder daughter confirming that she herself had been abused by her father.
It does, yes. Is that your references to the second line?
It's the second indented line.
Yeah.
Yes. Second and third. I beg your pardon. Third and fourth. Deny charge. Well, one has to really read it as a sentence. She, that's the eldest daughter, does not like what her father is doing with the other woman, and commendably, when pulled up before the other woman by the father to deny the charge of molestation to her, she insisted on the truth, despite the father's efforts to the contrary.
Yes.
if you then go to the reverse of page 11, which is ringtail 1489, perhaps if we can just go to the previous page, you'll see the foot of the previous page, there's a date, 17 June 1989, met with BCI, that's the mother, and BCG. And then over the page, counsel given on confiding matters of family to congregation members, used articles and scriptures. Counsel given to BCG also on same matters using above articles. Also on attitude to mother, encouragement also given for her honesty and in seeking help, 1 Timothy 5:4. Counsel given to the mother on her part as subjection to the father could have helped cause separation and subsequent matters. Used articles and scriptures of her responsibility, encouragement to help family. And then it says, interesting that both mentioned the eldest daughter as admitting to another, in inverted commas, attempt of molesting by the father when going to school at, and it's unclear, can you read that, what age that is? At something
Primary,
age?
probably primary school.
Well, it's got primary in brackets. The word before that looks like age, and before that it looks like it could be 10. At something crossed out, 10. At something.
Primary with a question mark, is that what you're referring to?
Just immediately before the primary with a question mark, what are the preceding two words?
That he was, when going to school at a later age. That's
Do you think at later age? Okay. Primary in with a question mark, need to check statement. And then quest, I take it that means question.
question.
Should one be studying with younger children even for short time until things settle? Question mark. Do you recall what was that? What was that reference?
I'm not sure.
And then you see there's an arrow down from where it said need to check statement down to what's then written below that.
I do, yes.
And it says the father took the eldest daughter's hand to place it on his private parts. She pulled away and refused to speak with him for some time. So what this is the report from the mother and BCG about an incident involving the eldest daughter. Is that right?
Yes, this was during our meeting, it seems, yes.
Yes. And then finally, for now, at page 14, just you'll see at the foot of the page it's recorded, it's got the father's name. And then can you read it out? Read your handwriting, Mr. Allied.
BCH has admitted, is that
Yes.
the line? Okay. BCH has admitted to all things and also said that whatever BCG has said on molesting was true.
So the father told you and your committee members that he admitted to all things which you've underlined, and also said that whatever BCG had said on molesting was true. That's how it happened, isn't it?
Is that a question?
Yes, that's how it happened.
That's,
He admitted to your committee.
yeah, it seems he did.
Yes. Yes. And it was only thereafter that you disfellowshipped him, and that was on the other grounds in relation to his relationship with the other woman.
Yes.
Yes. Now, what did you do with these child abuse allegations that you'd received from two daughters directly and from the mother in respect of the much younger daughters? What did you do with those?
This was, from my memory and from the notes, it'd be good to read them in entirety. I believe that at the end of our findings, we could only, having dealt with one issue at that time with him on the first matters of leaving his wife, the father leaving his wife and going off with another woman, we had to deal with that. From what's been brought out here, it would seem that having done that, he appealed that decision. And it may have been, and one would need to have to see any other notes with the appeals committee, that the other matter then may have been dealt with, but we needed to finalise that particular case against him and what he was doing at that moment.
You told me yesterday that you didn't have corroboration or an admission that enabled you to find the allegations to be proven. That's not right, is it?
Well, on the basis of the notes, that's what was my recollection at that time. Yes.
But that recollection is not correct, is it?
Well, it appears that from the notes that some allegations had been brought out, and that's taken would need to be taken.
More than allegations brought out, you've got apparently an admission.
Well, we still needed to then, in any judicial committees, follow through more thoroughly with because it's a one.
What more do you need if you've got an admission?
I believe that on the other notes he may have denied that he only said that to do what he can to get out of that situation. But that's the aspect that we would look at. But in my recollection that beforehand, without the use of the notes, we needed to follow through with sustaining or substantiating those matters as well.
Mr. Ally, you had received allegations of extremely serious conduct by a father against 4 of his daughters. Not so?
They were allegations, yes.
Yes. Well, they were allegations, but they were directly from 2 of the daughters themselves, who by that time were adults, albeit young adults. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, can I ask again that last, what you said at the end there?
2 of the people who reported this abuse to you were themselves the victim of the abuse. And at the time they reported, they were adults.
Yes, yes.
They were not very young children.
You're talking about BCG
and her older sister.
Yes, yes.
And you then had the mother tell you about what the father had done to the two younger daughters.
It seems that way in that's what she
You told
might
us
say.
yesterday that you believed BCG.
Yes, yes,
And you said that you thought she was very courageous,
yes.
and you believed her.
I stipulate that again.
Yet you regarded the adultery allegations as being more pressing to deal with those than these serious allegations. How can that be?
Well, I don't think it's quite as simple as ignoring it. We didn't ignore it. It simply was in the process because it only taken a day or two or whatever. I think the dates look at how long this process took, and it was very, very quick.
Well,
It did not take months or anything like that. It continued to be dealt with.
the dates don't bear that out. It started on the 1st of June. You suggested it might even have been the 1st of May. By the time you were told by the mother and the sister, it's from the notes it appears still to be the 1st of June, and it goes all the way through, and it's only on the 19th of July that there's an appeal. So your finding on the adultery was on the 19th of July or shortly before. It took a very considerable time.
Yes, within that month, but it was still had not been ignored. I would suggest from the notes here.
This man, to your knowledge and belief, on the information you'd received, was a danger to young girls, wasn't he?
Certainly it was.
And what did you do about that to protect young girls in your congregation and worldly young girls?
Well, in BCG's case, for a start, because we had the charge or accusation made about other children within that family, that had needed to be substantiated, but it was a process of following through, and it was to acquaint even with the innocent parent, following through with what she had to say, what other things could we do to support that. In BCG's case, she was taken out of that environment immediately. So the protection was extended to her because it appeared that I think it was still current or had been coming up to that time that we needed to deal with that.
Let's take a
So
look at
it was an immediate thing in her case, but it needed time then to follow through with the others.
Let's take a look at your statement. At Ringtail 0003, paragraph 5.6, so it's at the foot of the page, numbered as 6.
Is this my personal statement?
Yes, your statement to this commission dated the 10th of July. It will come up
Yep.
on the screen in a moment.
Could you give me that reference again, please?
It'll come up on the screen for you, but it's on page 3 of your statement, and it's paragraph 5.6. You'll see you say there, the Judicial Committee did not feel it had clear proof of the allegations of child sexual abuse from either party. Now that's correct, isn't it? You did not feel you had clear proof.
At that time, no.
And that's wrong, because you did have ample proof, didn't you?
Again, we hadn't dealt with that. We did not have clear proof because it's still on a one-to-one basis.
Well, that's what you go on to say. You say it was one person's word against another. Do you see that in that statement? But that's not true. It was 3 people's word against another. It was the eldest daughter, it was the next daughter, BCG was 17 at that time, and it was the mother.
Mm-hmm.
So it's false what you've written here, hasn't it? It wasn't one person's word against another.
It's, again, in making that statement, that was my recollection.
And then you say, however, the committee concluded it had a basis for disfellowshipping BCH for his conduct with the other woman and his lying. Do you see that?
Yes.
So you dealt with them together. You felt you didn't have sufficient proof on the child sexual abuse allegations, but you did on the other allegations. Not so.
Well, we had proof on one instance which we could act on, which we did.
The adultery. Yes. and notwithstanding the admission made by BCH and the evidence of the mother and the two elder daughters, you felt you didn't have sufficient to act on the child sexual abuse allegation?
Not at that time, no.
Well, let's take a look at your report to Bethel, back to the branch. It's at tab 3. So this is the report that you wrote on your Judicial Committee hearing, and it's signed by you at the foot of the page. Do you see that? Scroll down. See that?
Yes.
I take it you agree with what's written in this report?
I do.
That's why you signed it?
Yes.
Yes. And you can take a moment to read it, but there is nothing in there about the child sexual abuse allegations, is there?
No.
So you don't even report to the branch that the allegations were made?
No, we don't. We didn't.
Now that, even under your own procedure, is a very serious omission, isn't it?
It would appear so, yes.
Because very serious allegations have been made against someone, and even if they're not accepted by the Judicial Committee, because it's one person's word against another, they're supposed to be reported in case other allegations are made in the future or other similar allegations have been made in the past. That's what's supposed to happen, isn't it?
No, I think that the recent not the recent ones, but the guidelines that we had at that time did not suggest that we report that to the branch. That came, I think, more prominently anyway, in the 90s, early 90, 91, 92.
The 1991 guidelines.
Yes.
What is the name of the guidelines that have preceded the 1991 guidelines?
I think that was pay attention to the flock.
I call for that, Your Honour, perhaps from my learned friend Mr. Totley's client. The preceding manual to elders, the one that preceded the 1991 book, which is at tab 80.
Your Honour, I haven't got it with me personally, but if we've got it, we'll of course produce it. I'll have instructions taken straight away to ascertain its location and have it produced to the Commission. Thank you.
I suggest what happened here, Mr. Ally, is that you and your fellow members of the committee wrongly concluded that there wasn't sufficient evidence to accept BCG's allegations.
That we'd wrongly concluded it.
Yes.
That I don't see it that way. I'm sorry.
And you then just ignored those allegations.
No.
You
No,
didn't
that's incorrect.
You didn't even record it in your report to the branch.
No, we needed to report what we had, our findings were as to this person, but we did follow up, I think, within a reasonably very short time on the other allegations.
Well, what then happened is there was an appeal by BCH.
Yes.
And the allegations were resurfaced in the appeal. Is that right?
Yes.
And in the appeal, BCH admitted the allegations.
I believe so. That
Well,
could have been the case.
You were there, weren't you?
I was there as a listener or a bystander.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there was
we were not directly involved.
There was an appeal committee of elders Bennett, Wilson, and Maraziz.
Joe Morazes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Were they from another congregation?
Yes.
And the Judicial Committee of you and Mr. Bardich and Mr. DeRoy, you were also present during the appeal committee
As
hearing.
witnesses, yes.
Yes. And in in that hearing, when confronted with the allegations, BCH then admitted that he had abused his daughter, BCG.
I can't remember that. That may have happened.
And in any event, the appeal committee then confirmed the disfellowshipping and added to the grounds you had found of loose conduct and lying, added the grounds of porneia in the form of gross sexual acts against his teenage daughter 5 or 6 times during the latter part of the previous year.
I believe so, yes.
If you felt you didn't have sufficient proof, Mr. Ally, did you consider reporting these matters to the police?
No.
BCG didn't ask you not to report to the police, did she?
No.
Even after the confession by BCH, you still didn't consider reporting to the police?
I can't recall that she did, no.
Well, I asked whether you considered reporting the matters even after the confession.
I did?
Yes. Did you? You didn't, did you?
No, I didn't, no.
And can you explain why not?
Well, you mean after the appeals committee?
At either stage, you'd had 2 confessions, judging by your notes, but at either stage, why didn't you consider reporting to the police?
Well, that was still in the process of finding the facts on the charge of porneia that he was guilty on porneia and needed to be disfellowshipped on that.
Well, after the appeal committee, the facts had been found. There was no fact-finding continuing. After the appeal committee, why did you not consider reporting to the police?
Because it's still a matter of dignifying the person, of allowing them that opportunity to do that.
Do you not think this man should go to jail?
I'm very happy that eventually he did for what he did.
Well, that was only because BCG, some years later, found the strength after she'd left the church to report to the police. In the interim, you and your colleagues didn't report to the police at all.
No, we didn't.
Do you think it was okay for this man to be walking the streets and continuing an ordinary life, having received these allegations and confession?
It's certainly not a good thing for him to be freely doing what he was doing. I agree.
Wasn't it your duty to your fellow women, men and children to report a man like this to the authorities so that he can be properly charged and, if found guilty, put in jail?
Well, the police tried to do that.
Well, they only tried to do it years later when BCG reported to the police. All those intervening years, you had it within your power to report it to the police and set the train in motion. Not so.
Well, still, we did not have, I guess, the direction to be able to do that, and which I'm glad today that it has encouraged us now to follow through in seeking legal aid to do whatever we can to not only protect the victim, but to prevent anybody else being molested.
Well, the real reason, isn't it, is that you see your structures within the church as standing in the place of the civil structures.
Only when it comes to spiritual matters, and if those morals have people or those within the church have crossed those the guidelines, is to take the steps to remove the person, protect then through either instructions or personal counselling to those that are involved with that family and warning them of not allowing their children to stay overnight with this person, never to be alone with this person, never to work alone or go anywhere with that person. So many have been made aware of that.
You regard the police and prosecution authorities as worldly authorities and therefore not to be trusted, isn't that right?
No, I don't agree with that.
And that's because you have your own structures which displace the secular structures.
No, we try working all the time with the legalities of anything where the authorities need to handle cases like that. We will work in with that on the advice that the legal department give us.
Further questions, John?
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes.
Yes, I will, Your Honour. I'm just having some difficulty reading some of this to formulate the questions. So a little bit of time.
What do you want me to do?
If I could have 5 minutes before I've now been given a transcript of the handwritten notes. I'm just trying to.
I think you should go second anyway. So, Ms. David,
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Your Honour. Just to be clear, in relation to the confession that you have noted in the notes that were just read out to you with counsel assisting, do you not agree that that of itself is proof, isn't it, according to the criteria of the judicial standards?
It may be considered, but we needed to substantiate.
But isn't the confession of itself, isn't that what your guidance says? That it can be either a number of witnesses to the one event or a confession?
Of the same incident?
Just a confession by the
Of the
accused.
wrongdoer?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So a confession of itself is sufficient evidence, isn't it, to prove that
It
matter?
is, yes. Quite
But
true.
in this case, you just ignored it.
No,
Well, you weren't satisfied of it, were you?
no, we needed to, I think it's hard to define that, but except to say that the person may say things on the spur of the moment because they needed to get out of that situation. We needed to follow through to make sure eventually that this was the case, that this was true, that we could act on that.
So you have a person that you considered to be brave in the form of BCG.
Yes.
And a person you said yesterday that you believed and had no reason. In fact, you said you believed her. And then you also have a confession, but you choose to disbelieve the confession. Is that the situation?
Well, the confession I don't think was a confession in the sense of saying that he meant it. This is what I'm conveying that.
I don't understand this. Someone says to you that they accept that they committed what amounts to a serious crime, correct? And you say they might do that, confess to a serious crime to avoid a situation. I do not understand. Can you help me to understand what you mean by that?
A person may say things, whether to get around something or not, and then deny it later, or try and prove it. It was that manner. It was the manner, perhaps, that we needed to follow through to make absolutely sure that because if a person says that and then backs away from it later, we're left stranded, and then the victim is also left stranded. And we found that to be the case with what proceeded after that with the courts, where even they found it difficult to go through a number of times to get him to admit to that. And even then, they found that he wouldn't do that. So this is what we were faced with, I feel. I can't speak for the other members, but we needed to follow through to substantiate that thoroughly and make sure absolutely that it was absolutely true. That's the way I I would comment on that
Is this
reason.
your own thoughts, or is this how the Jehovah's Witnesses decide issues?
Well, we need to find the evidence, Your Honour, on
But are
the
these your
person
own
may
thoughts,
say.
or are these what the Jehovah's Witnesses generally, how they generally
This
conduct
is
their inquiries?
our guidelines that we need to follow through and substantiate that. Yes.
So even when someone confesses to a serious crime, you don't accept that and make a finding based upon a confession?
No, I think in certain circumstances we may have doubts as to the truthfulness of this person who was in a situation of lying already. We found him time and time again to either say things, deny things, and so on and so forth, and we had a battle to try and make something concrete in his case. And this is why you've seen that in the reports, that he continued. We put that charge of deliberately lying. And that's serious, and that in itself can disfellowship a person.
Well, it may be serious, but sexual assault of a child is very serious, isn't it?
It is.
And here you had an account of what happened from a person who you've told this hearing you believed. You also had a confession from the person who was alleged to have committed the act. And you tell me that the rules of the Jehovah's Witness didn't allow you to make a finding based on that material. Is that right?
No, that's not correct, Your Honour. We have someone that we believed what she said. We have another person who lies about what they said. He may say certain things, but we have no proof that we can believe this character because he has a reputation of lying.
Why couldn't you believe what he said based upon the fact that you accepted the truth of what the woman had said? Why wasn't that enough?
Because we still need at least two witnesses to a matter, but reliable witnesses, I suppose we would need to say, to actually substantiate those charges or to make a charge stick.
Isn't it the case that it is separate, isn't it? You can rely, you're not authorised by the scriptures to take congregational action unless it is a confession or there are two credible witnesses.
Yes.
That's the position, just to be clear.
It is a position, yes.
You just changed that in your previous answer. See, isn't it the situation that you are reluctant, aren't you, to make findings of such a nature against a brother who holds a senior position within the congregation?
No. Why would we try and hide him from...
Well, isn't it the case that within the Jehovah's Witness faith, you are of the belief that ministerial servants and elders are appointed by the Holy Spirit? Isn't that the case?
Correct.
And that the ministerial servant, that BC8 was a ministerial servant.
Yes, he was.
And he was a person, therefore, who was regarded within the congregation as someone to be looked at highly?
No, we don't see it as highly.
Well, don't you see that appointments by the Holy Spirit is a rather special position within the congregation?
It's more of a slave than a position. It's not as if we hold some dignified role or dress differently or whatever. We're there to work, you could say, as shepherds, to try and care for their needs and to help them.
All right, just coming back to the appointment process, the appointment process, you believe, is that those positions you are appointed to those positions by the Holy Spirit. Isn't that the case?
One has to go through a process of defining that. One has to have the qualities first, so it may take some time for them to demonstrate that first, before they're recommended to that.
That's right. So once they're recommended by the Holy Spirit, and it is really that, isn't it, by an appointment by the Holy Spirit.
Well, we, in the congregation, we recommend that person be appointed. We send that recommendation to the branch. They look at that situation. They pray over it. They look at the whole record and they decide when that person is appointed or not. We, in a local atmosphere, don't do that.
Did you have any involvement in the appointment of recommendations or appointment of BCH at all?
No.
But you would agree, wouldn't you, that to find out that a brother had in fact a person who was appointed by the Holy Spirit as a ministerial servant would call into question your process somewhat, wouldn't it?
No, I don't see why. What we need to do then as elders, and there's usually a body that's involved in the congregation, is monitor even each other. If one of those appointed men is displaying a particular sin or a weakness in a certain regard, that help will be given before he reaches a time before he can't be turned back. But if he continues in that course, then we can recommend his removal.
But it does, you would agree though, wouldn't you, that it calls into question how people are appointed to these particular positions, that it calls into question the process or the rigour of the process, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
That people are appointed incorrectly.
No, it doesn't happen that way. We need to follow the guidelines that the Scriptures provide. For example, in the letters to Timothy, there is a whole list of things that those who do the appointments would go through, and the elders who go through that process would need to look at.
See, I want to suggest to you that the purpose of the committee or the interrogation, and I'd like to call it an interrogation, of BCG during the committee process is partly designed to test her against a person who is considered to be an esteemed member of your congregation.
I didn't quite understand what you meant by that.
The process of interrogation was to, I'll rephrase it, is to protect in a way, or to ensure that, it's to protect the members, the elders and the ministerial servants of your congregation.
Why would we want to do that, if I may ask?
Well, that is because it's the case, isn't it, that women should be subjective to men in your religion, shouldn't they? They should defer to men.
They're directed by the Bible and its principles to act on a role that he has qualified for them. It doesn't mean subjection in a sense of do as I say.
It means to defer to men, doesn't it?
It defers to the authority of certain men, yes.
Okay. When you said that yesterday that BCG was very brave in the committee meetings, what did you observe about her that made you conclude that she was brave?
It's not an easy reading our articles and the direction from the branch on those things, and there are weights and watchtowers that acquaint us with the pain that a person and the suffering that a person goes through and how they may feel. And even as a father, one would imagine my own daughter, who was about the same age as BCG, to be able to stand up and tell the elders how she felt. It wouldn't have been easy at all for her. As a father, I felt for her, and I could see that she took her time. We encouraged her to just relax, take her time, no matter how long it took. That as long as she felt comfortable with telling us, because she wanted to explain what had happened to her. And I believe we did that. We wanted to allow her that time, but I felt that she had courage to be able to do that, to to explain those feelings and the hurt and the pain and every detail that she went through and what her father did to her, which I guess brought out in me certain feelings of anger, perhaps.
Anger towards the BCH?
Towards him, yes, the father.
But yet you chose not to do anything about it.
Well, my own feelings put aside, I still need to deal on a rational basis, keeping those feelings and knowing what she was going through. These are serious. One cannot ignore that. I know I spent some sleepless nights with knowing things like that afterwards as we dealt with her case.
You mentioned that in your statement that you spent some sleepless nights, but none of that translated into any action to give BCG any support, did it?
No, it did. It did, because the other two brothers who were closer as a family were doing everything to house and protect her. There was a neighbour that lived close to the family that also took her in.
See, I want to suggest to you that she wasn't immediately removed from the environment in which she had been abused, was she? And I'm suggesting to you that also her father had ready access to her.
My understanding at the time that it was very, very quick, though, that was given. Very, very quickly. And
I also want to suggest to you, well, it's quite clear, isn't it? The young children weren't removed. The other sisters weren't removed from access to the father where he might further abuse them, were they?
They weren't removed, no.
No steps were taken, in fact, were they?
No. Sorry?
And no steps were taken to protect either BCG or any of her sisters?
Well, I wouldn't say that, because now the mother also was involved, and what we normally do, if things progress very quickly to that, is to make her know that these things have taken place and to make some steps about protecting her children as well. Again, even she had the right to go to the police about what her daughter had gone through against her husband, if she so desired.
You were aware that the BCG's mother, in fact, was aware of the abuse, had been aware of the abuse for some time, weren't you?
She may have been, yes.
But she took no steps to protect her children, notwithstanding her knowledge of the abuse. Possibly,
and that's a pity if she did that.
So you were aware of that at the time, weren't you?
But yes, but it was still an unsubstantiated. We needed to still follow through to prove that that's what he did to other children. But as my memory recalls, we took the steps that were open to us to try and acquaint them of that danger.
Wouldn't you view going to the police as a system that would in fact assist you with ministering your faith? In this way, I want to suggest to you that if you had gone to the police, wouldn't it have been the case that they would have been able to properly investigate the nature and extent of the crime that was alleged?
And that's why the abuser, the abused, or anybody in that family had the right to do so.
But wouldn't it have been in your interest, wouldn't it have enabled you to better attend to the spiritual needs of both the accused and the accuser if you have had some other system which would have enabled you to have a better understanding of the nature of the crime that you were dealing with?
And I think we have that now.
Yes.
But we have that help. Yes. But back then in 1988, 89, such was the case where we felt we took the appropriate steps, and you mentioned the police. That was a right that the family could follow through on. And we dignified that right. I mean, would we be stepping out of line? What if the person then didn't want that?
The situation is that the whole process of the committees has nothing to do with protecting a victim, does it?
the interest of...
The process of the committee, it has nothing to do with protecting the victim of a crime, whether it's sex abuse or any other crime, does it?
That's incorrect.
Because isn't the primary purpose of your committee to is to restore, in every situation where guilt is established, the primary endeavour of the overseers is to restore the wrongdoer. Isn't that what it's all about? It's really about restoring the wrongdoer to come back to Jehovah, isn't it?
We would like that to happen, but we also need to read the rest of that where it says if a person does not have that intention, does not care to, then that they will be dealt with.
But the point of my question is this: isn't it the case that it has nothing to do with support or finding justice for a person who has been abused, for example? The process has nothing to do with that, does it?
Of course it has. It's all part and parcel of finding facts and proving that, and then allowing that individual to follow through with any authority that he or she chooses to. But it's not within our capability or authority to override that and say, I will do that, I don't care what you say. That would be up to that person to follow through with that, of course. That's my understanding.
You would have to concede, though, wouldn't you, that you are completely ill-equipped as an organisation to protect victims such as BCG?
I disagree.
In what ways do you say you are equipped to assist them?
Because we have the directions through our publications, through letters, through the schools that we attend every 2 years. We have visiting brothers or representatives called circuit overseers. We had district overseers who would visit either every 6 months and so forth, that we could discuss further or ring at any time if we needed to, some little clarification on whatever we needed to do. So we had all the helps are available to understand and follow through on the guidelines that we had at that time.
You talk about follow through, but you don't actually say what you actually do. Because I want to suggest to you that at no stage did anybody from your congregation even try to assist BCG by giving her some spiritual guidance through the scriptures, by talking to her about the scriptures, how she might feel better about herself after her abuse? No one did that.
There was a lot of follow-up.
Well,
after what she went through, there was a lot of follow-up. There was a lot of interaction with certain families, and you will find that once Kevin or Ron are here, you're probably, because they were closer, I know that they did follow through with visiting and supporting her in every way, even with any activities that came from after that.
You personally did not and have no personal or direct knowledge of her being given any guidance through the scriptures, do you?
Yes.
You were never present when she was given any guidance by the scriptures, were you?
I think the notes probably in the next meeting that we had, there were many articles I think that were quoted that suggest that.
Outside of the committee meetings, there was no guidance given to her from the scriptures, was there?
I can't recall myself doing that, no.
And at no stage did you ever tell her that you believed her, did you? That you believed that what she said about the allegation against her father was true?
I don't recall ever saying I don't believe her.
No, my question was, you never told her that you believed her, did you?
I can't recall that, but...
No.
No.
You never told her that you thought she was brave for coming forward, did you?
I thought I did. I believed I did.
Did you ever tell her that it wasn't her fault?
Of course. It's something that she is a victim.
Well, I'm suggesting to you that at no stage did you ever say to her it was not your fault.
I believe we did.
See, were you aware of the gossip that was going around at the particular time where people were in the congregation were accusing her of lying?
No. No.
So you weren't aware of that in your small congregation?
That others were accusing her.
Yes, there was gossip about her that she was had been telling lies.
I can't recall that, no.
Excuse me, I'll be a minute. After that she attempted to commit suicide, obviously that would have alerted you to the extreme distress that she was experiencing. You are aware that she attempted suicide some months.
I can't recall that.
You can't recall
no.
that. So you certainly don't then recall giving her any comfort or guidance after that incident.
I can't recall myself personally being involved in that. The other brothers, of course, did because their families worked closer.
Well, you don't have any recollection and you don't know what your other brothers did in relation to that, do you?
Yes, I do.
Well, you just said a moment ago that you didn't even know that it had occurred.
No, but I know that the support that they gave her and the comfort too of taking her into their homes.
Excuse me for a moment, Your Honour. During the committee process, there was a period where you all individually questioned her separately. Do you recall doing that with BCG?
No, we were all together.
Do you recall... See, I'm suggesting that there was a period, wasn't there, that you were all separately had the opportunity to question her without the others?
No. No, that didn't happen. Our judicial meetings are always together, the three elders, whoever they may be. That is the process.
You were testing her for inconsistencies, weren't you, when you were conducting your inquiry?
Can you give an example of that?
I'm just asking you, you were testing her for inconsistencies by asking her repeatedly to tell her story?
No. If we needed to clarify something and put that in place so that we could better understand, that would be the only occasions that we would ask that particular question, but we wouldn't ask repeatedly if we already knew that it happened. Why there would be no sense of us doing that.
But you would agree, anyway, in the event that through seeking clarification, you were satisfied then that whatever she said, that her story was a consistent story and that it was a believable story?
Yes, we wanted to now ensure that, so that if we needed to follow up with the father, that we had some of what happened in detail, so that we could then follow through with that too. But never to question BCG on her. Whether we believed her or not, that would be not correct.
Do you still have your notes in front of you that you had made of those meetings, the handwritten notes?
Handwritten notes of the meeting, yes.
Can you please turn to page 5 of those notes?
Yes.
If you could please turn to the bottom of page 5, do you see there that it makes it says this, that there is it has BCH, BCG and BCI. So obviously that was relates to BCG and both her parents.
Okay, yes.
If you look down, it says that when faced and his accusations, he denies all at this point. Then he says all or part of parental training, and yes, kissed on mouth and hugged tightly, but that's all. So did you counsel him about the appropriateness of that sort of parental training?
Well, some cultures do that.
So kissing on the mouth and hugging in a way that clearly BCG considered to be inappropriate and frightening to her, you consider that to be appropriate?
Not with everybody. Not with everybody. To explain, I'm an Albanian by birth. My parents were Albanian, so they're from Europe. There is cultures there where children and parents do kiss as such. It means affection, and it is taken as such, and that's why, in answer to you, that even here within our own area of Australia, country of Australia, we have cultures who do follow through that. He was a person of Hungarian.
In Queensland, or in Australia, would you not consider that such a kissing of the mouth in a manner that was clearly constituted an affront to the person being kissed would constitute some kind of an indecent assault?
I would that in now, yes, that would be considered by many as that, yes.
And that was...
Ms. David, I think we must take them all together.
Yes, sorry. Thank you.
On Friday.
Mr. Ali was in the witness box.
Is he here?
He's on his way around.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Ella, I want to deal first with the Judicial Committee and how the Judicial Committee dealt with the allegations that had been raised by BCG. Now, firstly, as I understand it, you and Mr. Bardich and I'm going to show you your notes in a minute. We'll come to that, but let's just get it clear what you mean. Do you mean to say you had dealt with the other allegations and made a finding on them, and then only thereafter you dealt with BCG's allegations?
Yes, followed through, yeah.
Now, I think your memory may be failing you on that, Mr. Ally, and in that regard I'll refer you to tab 3 of the tender bundle. You see, this is the report of your Judicial Committee. We can scroll down and see the names at the bottom. this was the report, and where your finding was on the last line there, loose conduct and lying, and the brother was disfellowshipped. Do you see that?
Yes.
Right. Now, at the time that BCG raised her allegations and you dealt with them, her father was not disfellowshipped.
Not on those allegations, but on what we dealt with him of an immoral course that he had taken with his wife. That's the founding or the findings that we had that we referred to on that loose conduct line.
Yes, I see that. The DeRoy had already formed a judicial committee to deal with unrelated allegations. Is that right?
Yes.
And they were allegations briefly put to do with BCG's father's relationship or possible relationship with another woman, not his wife. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then when these allegations of BCG were brought to the elders, you then dealt with them in the same judicial committee. Is that right?
The same members of the judicial committee, yes.
Yes. So you didn't have an independent investigation first and then decide to form a judicial committee. You just subsumed them into the discussions and investigation you were already doing. Is that right?
I know it followed fairly closely, but I'm not sure of the time element there, no, but it was tied in pretty much together.
Well, that's right, isn't it? That in the meetings that you had with various people who were involved or had an interest or were witnesses, you discussed these matters together. In other words, the question of BCG's father's relationship with another woman as well as BCG's allegations.
That, I believe, came at the end, later, after we had dealt with the father.
Well, Dino Ally, do you see that at the top left?
I do.
And it's headed appeal on basis of repentance. And it says, "Dear brothers, I wish to appeal." And then it goes on and it's difficult to read. But at the end, you'll see that it's signed by BCH, that's BCG's father. Let's go to the foot of the page. And you'll see it's dated 19 July 1989.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do you accept he appealed on that date?
That's what the appeal was, that's what he appealed, yes, on that basis.
So your decision to disfellowship him obviously preceded that.
Yes.
It was on that day or it was before that day?
Yes.
Yes. All right, now if we go back to tab 3. And go to the top of the page. It's actually undated except for a date stamp that says SD 7 August 1989. Do you know how that stamp came to be applied there?
No, I'm not sure.
They would suggest it's the service desk received that on the 7th of August 1989.
Okay.
And if we go to tab 5, you'll see this is the decision of the appeal. Do you recognize the names of the appeal committee there, Messrs. Bennett, Wilson, and Maraziz?
I do.
And that's dated 23 July 1989. You see that?
Yes, yes.
And there's a stamp SD 7 August 1989 at the top of that page as well.
Yes.
I take it, again, you don't know how that came there, but the at the time you dealt with BCG's allegations, you had not yet disfellowshipped the father, is that right?
We had taken the steps of announcing that disfellowshipping.
Well, if
we
you
had completed that sitting with him and decided that he needs to be disfellowshipped for what he did.
Well, if he'd already been disfellowshipped, why were you investigating further allegations against him?
What came through after that, they have the person who has this loose conduct in line and was referred to disfellowshipping had 7 days to appeal. If he wanted others to hear his case against what we decided, then a further committee could be made available to follow through. So there was at least 7 days before we could announce that he was disfellowshipped, that he acted in that way of saying, I would like another committee to sit in and hear my situation.
Right, well, let's just straighten out the chronology. If you take a look at tab 4, you see this is a memo addressed to Ron DeRoy, Kevin Bowditch, and